as summer transitions into fall, you're going to be seeing some changes in what bucks are doing.
Past September 1st, second week of September, third week of September, now we're looking at October almost. There's a second transition there. We're talking about a food transition. You know, not all of us can get out there for opening day of bow season. We have other things to do. We got family commitments, but you know what? Sometimes even if you're getting out there the second or third week of bow season, relax, it's okay. Because the more you know about deer behavior, the better decisions you can make, especially around the September transitions.
Late summer bachelor groups like to find a preferred food source and live close by in perfect harmony, like college frat boys. But soon antlers harden, velvet is shed, and while some post-velvet bucks remain the best of friends, others head off on their own.
In the summer and into early fall, they're still in bachelor groups. They're going to be traveling in these groups, but you're going to see some more pecking order being established. Everyone's not going to be as friendly as they were earlier. The more mature bucks are going to be a little moodier, not want so much to do with the smaller bucks, and the smaller bucks are going to start to be a little more playful. Maybe even you're going to see a little bit of a sign, some rutting signs, some rutting activity. You're going to see the sparring beginning, a little bit of the shoving and pushing about. All of this is for what's going to come in the future, the rut. These are the changes. But just as significant as what's happening within a buck, that slow surge of testosterone, are environmental changes. And one of the biggest in whitetail country is agriculture. As agriculture begins to occur in September, probably beginning with the cutting of silage and soybean harvest and eventually into the corn harvest, deer food sources are changing, transitioning, and disappearing. So a bachelor group that's feeding maybe in a soybean field one day, and then the next week it's harvested, may all of a sudden up and move.
Dan Schmidt is no stranger to opening week in Wyoming, though this year he arrived a few weeks later when the deer are beginning their transitions. The velvet is gone, the acorns are falling, and the deer are moving.
We're in Wyoming, we're hunting the September transition. It's 48 degrees outside. This is what I live for as a bow hunter, and I can't wait to get out there.
This segment is brought to you by Outdoor Edge Knives and Tools, from field to freezer and everything in between. Delicious, abundant, lush food sources like alfalfa fields can be a powerful drawing force for white-tailed deer, especially in the early bow season. However, as fall approaches, don't be surprised if you notice that the attendance rate isn't exactly consistent, as both the deer and the environment begin to transition.
So a common question is, if there's lush alfalfa out there, why is a deer suddenly going to give that up and start going towards mass crops? Well, they are programmed. They are programmed by the biological clock, by the autumn clock. Those acorns, it's a very limited source of food, packed with protein, packed with fat. Deer inherently know that once those things are falling, they better get on them because there's other things going to be out there eating them. Turkeys, other animals are going to be foraging on those acorns. It's a limited supply of food. And those bucks, just like dogs, just like turkeys, just like anything else, they want to be the alpha in their home range. And that home range can be vast in western parts as opposed to midwestern states and northeastern states. Another thing to keep in mind with deer behavior is when you have that colliding of worlds that I'm talking about, of not only individuals in the herd, but then the food source changes. It makes a recipe for a little bit tricky hunting that you really need to harness what food sources they're going to be on and when they're going to be on them, and especially when is that transition taking place. It's not snap of a finger or turn on a light switch and all of a sudden they're off soybeans and into acorns. It's more of a gradual thing. Harnessing that, knowing what they're doing, it's a lot of boot leather, it's a lot of time behind the steering wheel, it's a lot of time glassing, and finding out exactly where those deer are entering and exiting the farm crops that they've been eating for a month and a half, and to where they're going into maybe these bedding areas on the higher ridges, because they like to bed high and eat low, especially when you're talking 80 degrees during the day and 40 degrees at night. So that's where your scouting comes in. Scouting is crucial, and knowing deer behavior is crucial, because you're not going to be hunting those same bucks you saw a month ago. So we're here in Northeast Wyoming again. You've seen us here before. Ralph and Lenora Dampman, Trophy Ridge Outfitters, near Carlisle, right by Devil's Tower Monument. We've hunted this area for over 10 years. We've showed it to you on the television show before. You know, you could have velvet bucks in front of you, you could have hard-horn bucks in front of you, you could have a buck peeling his velvet in front of you, which we've actually shown, and we've killed a deer doing that. We're here third week of September this year, and it's full-blown transition. Not only dispersal behavior, we have not seen a velvet buck, so a lot of these bucks that are peeled are bucks they haven't seen this year yet. They've been in other places, they're gravitating to probably their core areas of this area, of that bigger home range, but they're also gravitating towards the shifting food sources. Here in Northeast Wyoming, everything is burned up dead. If you look at these hillsides, brown, 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 not much green, but they have center pivot ag fields. And these center pivot ag fields are just like, it's an oasis. There's green everywhere that's getting watered regularly. Alfalfa, deer love alfalfa, right? Especially in September, yes, absolutely. A lot of times you think you get to the third week of September, they're off the alfalfa. They're not. They are in it more than ever now because of the moisture content, but deer are deer. The acorns are falling, and that's what they're heading to. So we have to figure out how can we get one of these deer in that transition from point A food source to point B food source.
On his first sit, Dan is sitting in a tree on the edge of a center pivot alfalfa field. What he doesn't know yet is that on the opposite side of the field, and right in the middle of a whitetail highway, is a large oak tree that has given the deer incentive to take their time with getting out to the field. Will a nice buck make its way into bow range before dark? Spoiler alert, no. But it's not the night's failure that matters here. It's the observations that Dan makes and how he uses his newfound knowledge to plan out his strategy for the next day. Coming up next, Dan and guide Eric Dunn devise a plan to cut their distance to the new food source in half.
Bow hunting, this transitional stage, it can be feast or famine for you and the deer. You have to be set up to not only be watching that bachelor group pattern, and that can be a huge benefit in September and even into early October, because those bucks are patterning to a specific food source and oftentimes using the same trails in and out of those fields. But you also have to be aware of what happens when that food source changes or another becomes dominant, like acorns can be. Then you have to have a backup set ready. So in summer, when you want to be out golfing, boating, fishing, whatever, don't forget to have your tree stands, your ground blinds, your ambush sites set up on the major food source, and then have a backup food source like acorns or a small winter wheat plot already in place. Because when the deer decide to change it up, you may not have time to change it up and have a new set ready.
That said, whether you have the extra time or not, being mobile may be the only option you have left.
So the plan here was just to get into that field, 200 yards closer to where we saw those deer congregating last night. And that was just as simple as analyzing how that center pivot had been going across that field. A little bit more moisture in those wheel treads, a little bit more alfalfa for those deer to eat. The deer are going to be coming off this hillside. They'll probably start coming out of there 3, 4 o'clock, and it's going to be a slow progression until it really starts picking up 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night. Lucky for us, we're in that stand for maybe an hour, and I spy a really nice mature buck way off on the hillside, but his beams come way out and around. I'm like, you know what? Adult buck, great day, good enough for me if he comes in. This might happen, but it's going to take a while. A couple fawns playfully just start running towards our blind, and before I know it, I'm like, look out, they're all coming at us. My buck is dead right there. Let's go get him. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this gift. May this be a reminder of our place on your earth. And please accept our gratitude for another day living in your way. Through Jesus' name we pray. What a beautiful deer. We are all ready to go. Aim small, miss small, that's always in my head whenever I'm bow hunting, whether it's compound bow hunting or crossbow hunting. But that changes a little bit, and my attitude towards it changes depending upon how far that shot is. With today's new technology, these new crossbows especially, you can add 10, 20, 30, or even more yardage to your effective range. So does that mean I just go out there and aim at the same spot? No, I do not. Especially, I just shot a doe with, this is the new 10-point Havoc RS440. It's brand new for 2021. I was one of the first people to shoot it, and I shot a doe here last week. And I shot that deer at 50 yards, I'll admit that. That's one of the longer shots I've taken. And the reason why I was able to do that is, yes, the technology is great. These things are spot on and lightning fast, 440 feet per second. But I adjust my aiming a little bit. That deer still needs to be calm. It needs to be broadside. And I have to aim small, but I'm not aiming at the same spot as I would on those slam dunk shots at 20 and 30 yards. I move that aiming point out a little bit because I know that deer can duck. That happens, especially, the speed of sound. You do the calculations, a deer's out there at 50 or 60 yards. a lot can happen with just a little bit of movement. So for me, you know, if I go back to when I started bow hunting, we always said if you could put 10 out of 10 in a paper plate, you were good to go, no matter what distance you were. Well, if I'm shooting 50 yards and beyond, it has to be better than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim a little bit outside that pocket, you know, right behind the leg, a little bit to the far end of it, maybe an inch, inch and a half, and a little bit lower. It sounds like a really small difference, but it makes a big difference if that deer moves just a little bit. And with today's technology, I know I'm still going to be in the kill zone and have enough kinetic energy to put that deer down quickly and humanely.
Easton uses a totally different process than the way that traditional arrow manufacturers use to make arrows. And to understand the benefits of what Easton does, I'm going to first explain how regular arrows are made. Conventional carbon arrows are made using what's called a wrap and roll process. And with that process, you take a mandrel and you take a sheet of carbon fiber and you're going to roll it around a mandrel. They then cure it, and then they grind it to shape. At the end of the day, what you end up with is carbon arrows that are grouped, spine matched, sorted by weight, and then are sold to the public. But the problem comes in when you get down to 2 or 3 arrows left in the dozen. You have to go buy a new dozen, and they aren't going to match necessarily the previous dozen you had. And so there's variability in that. And you could have quite a bit of variability in weight as a result. Easton's arrows are different. We use a process called Accu-Carbon. And with Accu-Carbon, we take dry carbon fiber, we put it over a mandrel and a die, and we take individual strands of fiber that come in together to make a single shaft that comes out of our machines. And unlike a wrap and roll process, we don't have a seam in our shafts. Our Accu-Carbon process makes a better quality arrow because all of our arrows that come off of our machine are made on a single die and a single mandrel. That means that arrow number 1 and arrow number 10,000 are going to all weigh the same, and they're all going to have the exact same spine. So you're not going to get that weight variation from dozen to dozen like you would get with traditional made arrows. The other benefit to Accu-Carbon is you get a perfectly consistent wall thickness around the outside of the shaft. There is no seam. With the wrap and roll process, when you wrap the carbon fiber around the mandrel, there's always going to be a seam where the carbon fiber ends. And with the Accu-Carbon process that Easton uses, that seam does not exist. You may have heard of some people floating their arrows or checking for a high spine of the arrow. That is a lot of extra work, and maybe on traditionally made carbon fiber arrows, there's some benefit. One of the benefits of Accu-Carbon is because our spine is consistent around the shaft right from the get-go, you don't need to do that, and you're going to have better performance because of it.